The Monster Below by Greenback, read by Deathlight. Chapter 5, Water Upon the Rock. My every waking moment was devoted to those books over the next 2 days. I barely moved from my desk as I went through page after page, absorbing everything I could find. But my notes upon finishing the first book amounted to a single paragraph. Disappointing to be sure, but not unexpected. After all, the book was a general guide to magic, light and breezy, and meant for the common pony just starting out on their studies. Putting away the first book, I started on the second, a guide to alicorns and their history. The one had more material to work with, and I got an entire page of notes. Paused, I moved on to the final book, which covered magic more in depth than the first. Perhaps my excitement propelled me onwards, for before I knew it, I had finished that one as well, and I had gotten nowhere. Oh yes, the book had plenty to say about magic and how it fit into daily life. There's plenty about alicorns too, about how vital they were, their place in pony society, and how their greatest responsibility was to serve as an inspiration for us all. That was nice, but I didn't care. I wanted to become one. And the books only repeated the well-known facts that if you weren't born an alicorn, the only way to become one was to perform an extraordinary feat for the good of Equestria. And even that, only the princess can transform you. But what were the odds of me, an ordinary earth pony, doing such a thing? No, I wanted to find some rare and hidden spell that can transform me in an instant. Putting the book away, I told myself that this had been a temporary setback. I had only read 3 books. There were hundreds, maybe even thousands more just like them. I just needed to find the right ones. Upon returning the books to the library, I wasted no time in heading back to the magic sections and picking out the next 3 thickest books I could find. Despite getting a sore back after carrying them home, I didn't mind. After all, I had triple the content to go through, and thus triple the chance of finding the answer I sought. I couldn't lose. I felt so good that I started up the fireplace and played a little jazz music while reading the books on the couch. Little Celestia was standing beside me. I went through the first book in record time, and then the second, and finally the third. And got nowhere. There's nothing new to be found within the pages. I began to feel uneasy. The next several trips to the library fell within a pattern. 3 books, a quick read, momentary panic upon finding nothing, then returning said books to the library and grabbing 3 more. I became a common sight to the library's regulars, who probably saw me as an earth pony weirdo who loved unicorn magic. Had we all been back in school, they'd probably call me a bookworm, or in the vein of Mangus, Bluehorn, Bookwort. With each book, my knowledge of magic, alicorns, and the species grew. I even found transformation spells, but they were only temporary, and for the highest level unicorns, it wasn't until my 20th trip that I realized something. If a pony like me had tried to change him or herself, why wasn't it common knowledge? Had it been so disastrous that the event had been covered up and buried away deep within a vault somewhere, never to see the light of day again? The thought intrigued me, so much so that it took me several minutes for me to remember the critical fact. The library had a restricted section. On my next trip to the library, I made my way to the front desk, put on a smile, and asked the librarian if I could visit the restricted section. The librarian had seen me enough to add me to her list of harmless regulars who wouldn't cause a fuss. But the moment I asked the question, something in her seemed to change. I couldn't quite put my hoof on it, but I wondered if she put 2 and 2 together, and realized what I was up to. Whatever she thought, she nodded and guided me down a flight of stairs. Despite this intimidating name, the restricted section was not off limits to ponies in general. The name refers to the fact that it holds Manhattan's most treasured books, including rare manuscripts from ages past. Any pony was free to read them. The books just couldn't leave the building. The restricted section was housed in the basement. so as to protect the material in case of a fire or some other disaster that might befall the library above. The only way in or out, though, was through a double door embedded in a wall of plexiglass. Hard enough to resist a dozen Earth Pony smashes for hours on end. Once I was led through, I found myself inside a climate-controlled room where the books were chained onto the walls in stacks, ensuring that they wouldn't be carried out, and just to be safe, to ensure that no one could try to sneak them out under their manes or coats. Not that I would do any such thing, at least not at that point. After the librarian left, I spent most of my day going through the manuscripts, taking extra care with the older ones. The last thing I wanted was a super rare diary of an Alicorn king to fall apart in my hooves, thus depriving Equestria of his most intimate thoughts, like his favorite ice cream flavor or his favorite soap opera. While that didn't happen, none of the manuscripts divulged anything new. Sure, they were fascinating to read, but outside the novelty of holding original manuscripts that were thousands of years old, the information inside them was still common knowledge, long copied into textbooks. Still, I kept looking. Whatever I needed was bound to be here. Working my way through the room, I went through books about history, records of ancient leaders, and research on the galaxy. I went through mythology books, finding drawings of fabled beasts of old, Cerberus, Wendigos, and evil dragon gods. I finally made my way to the back of the room. I found a manuscript from the time of the Unicorn Dragon War. I hoped it would have something of use, guessing that during times of desperation against a great and powerful enemy, ponies could convert some of their own as magical backups. As it turned out, I was right. At the end of the book, there was a hastily scribbled entry from the book's anonymous author, describing how, in the aftermath of a battle that littered the field with corpses of unicorn soldiers, the Rose were contemplating a desperate plan of action to replace them. But when I had turned the page, it contained only a list of unicorns who had been killed, with no further mention of the plan. A plan to replace fallen unicorns? As I looked upon the words, I grinned. This was what I was looking for. I didn't know much about the Unicorn Dragon War, but went on a search to remedy that fault. Turns out there was only one book on the shelves. The war had been so far in the past, most ponies don't even know about it. I didn't until reading the manuscript. Grabbing the book, I took it home and began my research. The Unicorn Dragon War, as I learned, was the result of an event that had been forgotten. Probably a misunderstanding in between unicorns and an ancient dragon species called archdragons that were far more powerful than their descendants today. However the war was started, it set off a wave of conflict in between the two species that lasted almost 100 years, with both sides enduring heavy losses. In the end, it was called off by a truce, with both sides agreeing to basically leave each other alone, and they had done so ever since. While interesting, the book didn't go into much detail about the battles or troops, other than to note that some of the casualties in the bloodier battles numbered into the thousands, wiping out entire families of unicorns. There was no mention of an Alicorn plan to convert troops, and that's what made me suspicious. While the Catalan archives probably had more detailed records, everything known about the war came from the manuscript I read. Why wouldn't they mention the Alicorn's plan? It was something I pondered for a long time, until a possibility came to me. One I didn't want to comprehend, the information being suppressed. But how could that be? Censorship was almost non-existent in Equestria, as the only reason information would be censored is if it could cause great physical harm to the population at large. If the Alicorn planned it to be censored, I needed to find out why. When I returned upstairs, I went to the front desk and asked if there was any other rare books on the shelves. The librarian told me yes, there was. When I asked if I could be guided there, she pointed to a thick door behind the reference desk and said I wouldn't get far, for the rest of the library's collection was stored in the forbidden section. Only scholars could enter, not the general public. Trying not to give away my sudden burst of panic, I asked why that was so. It turned out the section housed scrolls and manuscripts containing ancient magic that could be deadly if used improperly. Thus, only serious scholars were allowed inside, so as to avoid any pony from accidentally unleashing spells that they aren't ready to handle. I turned on the charm, telling the librarian that I knew rules were rules, but they're only a place to make sure that no one does something dangerous. I just wanted to do some research on the Unicorn Dragon Wars, that was all. The librarian seemed to reconsider. I said nothing more, but kept my pleasant smile, even as the librarian frowned. She said no, that the rules were final and had no exceptions. Furthermore, she warned me if I tried to charm her again, I'd be banned from the library for years, and told me to leave. While my ability to charm others to my will is potent, it does have its limits. The librarian was one of the rare ponies who possess an extremely strong will, usually found in those who don't suffer fools or nonsense of any kind. Nothing I could say could change the old mare's mind. There's a certain insult beings with hands like to give when they're quite angry that involves a single finger. If I had hands, I would have made the gesture to the librarian as I left. Even now, I'm not sure I managed to get back home without breaking into a string of curses on the subway and the streets. Taking a hot bath to calm my nerves, I closed my eyes as I sank into the near scalding water and contemplated my options. On the bright side, I was positive that ponies had been changed into another species. On the downside, any information regarding to such a thing was locked up tighter than Tartarus. The rules did make sense. It would be dangerous to let any pony inside and run amok with the spells contained within. But what about those who wanted to better themselves? I wasn't some dictator in their making who wanted to control time and space or overthrow their royal sisters. All I wanted was to make myself like them. I tried to figure out how to continue onwards, but my options were few. Traveling to Canterlot would likely yield the same results, for their forbidden section was likely bigger and even harder to enter. The only other option was to enroll in academics and spend the next decade working to become a scholar. But no way in Tartarus I was going to waste my life studying books. There was only one other option for me. I had read of stores in Canterlot that held extremely rare magical items, and one of them had gained quite a bit of infamy upon selling an alicorn amulet to Trixie Lulamoon decades ago. Who's to say that other shops wouldn't have some forbidden manuscripts I could use? But there was one problem with such a plan. After going through the Manhattan stores, I had learned that if you wanted the very best things, you needed a lot of bits. True, I had enough to live off for a year, but I would need even more if I wanted a chance at buying something I could actually use. Having taken a substantial time off work, I headed back to the grocery store with a new plan in mind. Save up enough bits to visit Canterlot and see what treasures were hidden within its alleyways. It was focused and achievable, but doubt began to creep in as weeks went on. Like every pony in Equestria, I knew the story of Princess Twilight Sparkle, the most prized pupil of Celestia, but also one of the only ponies who had been granted with the gift of transformation, much like Princess Cadence. My parents had been little when the transformation occurred, and told me it had begun an event unlike any other in equestrian history. Now, Twilight Sparkle was in a higher social standing than an ordinary pony like me. I could accept that. I also knew that she didn't get to sit around and relax, as being both the Princess of Friendship and one of the bearers of the Elements of Harmony had kept her busy all these years, dealing with one crisis and one problem after another. I wondered if at times, Twilight Sparkle would envy my simple life. But while I didn't envy Twilight's responsibility, I envied her gifts. She had magic and flight at her command, and had the love and adoration of millions. She had been the most admired pony in Equestria. Nobody knew about me, nobody knew about my wishes. If you need an alicorn to grant you the gift of becoming one of them, what chance did I have? Months passed, I continued to save all the bits I could. Life went on as normal. Then, one day, after mopping a spill in the freezer section of the grocery store, a thought struck me like lightning in a thunderstorm. Becoming such a highly public pony, Twilight's life is available to read from many sources. such as newspapers, book articles, interviews, and gossip. But one article that I'd read many years before always stuck with me. That is normal ponies being interviewed about what they thought of Celestia's star pupil, and one of them was a retired guard from Canterlot. "Twilight," he had said. "Great gal, always polite, punctual, and easy to get along with. Though she did act a bit strange sometimes. I was always on duty in the Canterlot Record Hall at night. I saw her sneaking around with her friends. I guess they were just having fun, or maybe practicing for a play or something." The article never elaborated what Twilight was doing, but the word, sneaking, struck out to me like blood on a white wall. Just what would she be doing sneaking around? Had she been after something? A magical artifact? Some sort of spell? Whatever it was, it apparently worked, and she had become an alicorn not too long after. My thoughts moved with breakneck speed. If Twilight Sparkle snuck around to find a forbidden item and succeeded, how the item helped her to become an alicorn. If she had bent or broke some rules to do so, was it possible for any pony to do the same? Could I? It was a tempting thought. I relished it for several seconds, and realized it was a fool's hope. Breaking rules, not to mention breaking into places to get what you wanted, wasn't right. I wasn't that desperate. Pushing the thought aside, I got back to work. But I soon realized I couldn't get rid of the thought so easily. The thought came back to me again and again over the next few weeks, despite my efforts to ignore it. I wasn't willing to break the law to get what I wanted. Completely out of the question, no way, no how. But the idea tickled with me. It niggled, it refused to leave, trying to wear me down like water upon rock. One drip has no effect, but a million can carve away even the strongest mountain. Would I do what Twilight had done? As the months passed, it became harder to resist the thoughts. I was working towards the next step in my dream, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the odds were not good. After all, what were the odds that the Canterlot stores and merchants would sell something that would allow me to become an alicorn? After the incident with Trixie Lulumoon, there had been a Equestria-wide crackdown on magical artifacts. Princess Celestia didn't want a well-meaning pony getting to inadvertently wreak havoc on the general public by getting a death spell or something similar. If the power to give a unicorn alicorn level magic existed, the something to give a pony both alicorn flight and magic was dangerous beyond all measure. Perhaps a manuscript did exist that gave those abilities to whomever was brave enough to seek it out, but not likely. Princess Celestia's crackdown included books as well. It's amazing how focusing on the negative can bring you down so quickly. Day after day, I began to realize how hopeless my quest was. It was as if I had cancer in my mind, of a thought that had taken root and grew relentlessly. My productivity at work began to slip. My enthusiasm dropped. My fake smile vanished as the days of cleaning, stocking, and bagging blurred together into a horrible tedium. There were moments where I had to lean against the wall to steady myself for another long day of doing the same accursed work over and over again. Even my days off brought me no comfort. Back at Saudalenka, I would often find peace of mind walking among the trees and grass. But not in Manhattan, not even in its enormous park. My manager began to notice that I wasn't doing so well. Being a pony who isn't just focused on earning as many bits as possible, he suggested I take a 3-day weekend and try to lighten up. He suggested trying the entertainment district if I wanted to refresh my spirits. Instead, I spent those 3 days in my room, looking out the window, watching the city as it went about its business, unaware that I even exist. I would have liked to go to the amusement park or the theater, but my manager didn't understand. While I may escape my problems for a few days, they'd still be there when I came back. My problem wasn't boredom, it was knowing that my live stream might be unattainable. On my last night of the 3-day weekend, I couldn't sleep. I spent it lying on my back, staring at the ceiling, aware that I was at the crossroads. I had 2 choices available for me: give up on my dream and spend the rest of my life as a grocery store worker, an occasional writer, provided I could actually get work as a writer, or go into academics and spend the next decade or two trying to work my way up. Both felt like they were dead ends. My answer wasn't going to be found giving up or spending countless hours doing something I didn't want. My answer wasn't going to be found giving up or spending countless years doing something I don't want. The answers to my problems lie inside the forbidden section. A single door was all that stood between me and my dream. Little Celestia's tiny eyes were watching me. I looked back for a long time. The thought came to me once again, but this time I didn't push it away. Twilight Sparkle had wanted to become an alicorn, and had snuck into someplace forbidden to get what she wanted. I could do the same. Little Celestia kept watching me, as if waiting to see what I was going to do. I didn't have an answer for her. I lay there late into the night, wondering how far I was willing to go to get what I wanted.